morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Heritage Universalist Unitarian Church. Whether you're here in the sanctuary, joining us on Zoom, hey Zoomers, perhaps watching a replay of this service sometime after today. I'm Bob Lamb, a member of Heritage, and I am your worship associate for today. Heritage is a Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Universalist tradition. We have no dogma or creed that you are required to follow. We are here to provide compassion, love, and community to all who would enter. If you're new to Heritage, a special welcome to you. If you come seeking acceptance of who you are, you will find it here. If you need encouragement on your path, you will find it here. If you need someone to hear your story, you will find them here. If you simply need a safe place to sit surrounded by love, you will find it here. We would like you to sign our guest book and get a name tag from the ushers. If you would like to know more about the church or maybe take a tour, ask anybody. But we do have a designated member of the board for that. Today's board greeter is Julie Kane. There she is right there. You can find Julie in the entryway after the service. We'd also like you to join us in the Great Hall after the service for coffee and conversation. If you're visiting online, please go to our website, huuc.net. There you'll find lots of information about our church. Everyone should have received an order of service. On the back, you will find announcements about things that are coming up in the community. Reverend Bill sent me an early morning text message that said, please promote, let's see now, where is it on the back? Actually, I don't see it on the back. Yeah, oh, here it is, yes. About the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 one down. Learn about the proposed changes to the UUA bylaws at our Article 2 forum, which will be tomorrow, Monday, January 22nd at 7 p.m. in the Heritage Room here. Lacey Adams, our DLFD, Jen Cialino, and Rebecca Pace will explain the proposal, share what gives them hope, and outline their concerns. How do the changes alter our principles and sources? What covenants are we asked to commit to? What might these changes mean for Heritage? Contact Rebecca or Jen if you have any questions. So let's all show up for that one. And now we have another promotional announcement. Tracy Joe.
Whether or not you have your own really cool hat, you can come to the Heritage Hoedown. February 10th, 6 o'clock. John Sandman is going to be smoking a lot of the meats. There will be some vegan and vegetarian options. Then we're going to have square dancing. And it's going to be super fun. If you are 10 years old and above and you're willing to hold hands, you can dance. And you might be thinking, oh, I don't know how to square dance. That's why we have this very experienced caller. He even teaches 5th graders how to square dance. So there's hope for all of us. We really hope that you'll come. If you look on the back of your order of service, midway down, there's the link. You can go to the Heritage website and find the link. You can go to Facebook and find the link. You can call me and find the link. But if you look on the back of the order of service, the link is there. There will be childcare for littles and mediums. The kids can dance for the first few dances and then they'll have another activity. Really hope you can be there. Really important fundraiser for us, February 10th, 6 o'clock. Thank you. I was looking for a dance partner, but Bob was not there.
Yay. Our senior minister, Bill Gupton, is not here. He's in the pulpit at St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church today. And in return, leading our service today is Reverend Jenn Gracen, who is the interim minister of St. John's. behind me. Reverend Jenn enjoys working with congregations who are finding their way through a transition, as St. John's is now. Reverend Jenn's had a shorter commute today because she lives here in Anderson with her wife and 2-year-old daughter. Reverend Jenn is a lover of reading and tells me she is a deeply geeky person who has been leading an online Dungeons and Dragons game since the beginning of COVID. We're very happy to have Reverend Jenn with us this morning. Now, Reverend Jenn will call us to worship.
Do have a whole sermon about Dungeons and Dragons, but that's not today. We kindle our chalice flame this morning, awakening the fire of our ancestors in our hearts. Beacon of freedom held out to light the way, light of reason illuminating the path, spark of courage igniting our spirits, a glow with hope for all we endeavor to do together. Holy flame of times past, brighten this present moment, that we may be the love that is our center and our foundation both. Blessed be. Come, let us worship together.
Now please rise as you're willing and able for our opening hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses, and remain standing for our covenant. That love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus we covenant with each other and with God.
What a lovely covenant. I love telling this story, but this is a story that I can't tell alone. I'm going to need help. So all of you, you have several roles to play. You're going to be a mountain, and I'll cue you, don't worry, because you might be wondering what mountains do all day. You're going to be townspeople. I'll cue you. So one day, a long time ago, or maybe it was last week and just around the corner, there was this little town nestled at the base of a big mountain. Told you a mountain would come into play. And on the top of that mountain was written, the answer is no. Practice that for me. No. Yeah, that's right. So one day, Ma Custis, she couldn't decide what to cook for dinner. So she went out and she looked way up at that mountain. And she said, should I make liver for dinner? And the mountain said, no. It's like, oh, right, of course. Nobody likes liver. I knew that. Should I make steak for dinner? And the mountain said, no. That's right. Well, okay, what about pasta or pizza? And the mountain said, no. I heard someone say sure in there. When I told this story to my 2-year-old, she said, yes. What about tacos or tofu? No. What about stew or sausage? And the mountain said, no. You guys are excellent mountains. I bet you didn't know that this morning. So Ma Custis stomped her foot. There you go. And she said, this isn't working. So she stomped to the center of town, and she rang the bell. I need help. This is a heavy bell. She rang the bell. Oh, there we go. Excellent. And everybody came running, from the oldest man with the longest beard to the smallest baby still held in her mommy's arms. And when they all got to the center of town, Ma Custis says, this isn't working. We need a different answer. Why does it have to say no all the time? And the Custis family was like, yeah. And so everybody started talking. Excellent. You guys are great townspeople too. And finally, they agreed that the mountain should say yes. Well, Mason Carver, he came forward and adjusted his cap, and he said, well, yeah, okay, I could climb the mountain and recarve it. It'd take a little bit of time, but I can do it. So every day for 2 weeks, Mason Carver climbed up that mountain, and he worked on fixing it to say yes. And finally, he came back down the mountain, and he rang the bell. Oh, excellent. And everybody came running, from the oldest woman with the whitest hair to the smallest baby being carried by her papa. And they all came to the center of town. And Mason said, well, it's done. The mountain says the answer is yes. And so Ma Custis came forward, because everyone agreed she should try it out first. And she said, should I make liver for dinner? And the mountain said, yes. I heard that. And she said, but my kids said they would hide in the barn for a week if I made liver again. Are you sure? And the mountain said, the answer is yes. Somebody really doesn't like liver here. And she said, but I promised. Are you saying I should break my promise? And the mountain said, yes. There we go. And Ma Custis turned around. She said, this doesn't work. What are we going to do? And everybody started talking again. And the Custis kids were contributing the most because they were really worried about this. And finally, they came up with, they should recarve the mountain to say, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, sometimes the answer is maybe, and sometimes it's, I just don't know. Well, Mason Carver came forward, a little slower this time, and he said, well, I mean, I did just finish, but I suppose I could do it, but I can't work on it every day this time, so it's going to take longer. And they agreed, they needed it to change. And so for a while, he was able to go up there every day, but Then he started not being able to. He had other work to do. And while this was happening, everyone started talking to one another and figuring out the solutions to problems together and asking one another what to make for dinner. And eventually they decided to leave the temporary sign that they had put on the mountain, which said, "The answer is under construction." The end.
Now we'll sing out the children to their classes with number 413, Go Now in Peace. This reading is from the Reverend Gordon B. McKeeman. How does one address a mystery? Cautiously. Let us go cautiously then to the end of our certainty, to the boundary of all we know, to the rim of uncertainty, to the perimeter of the unknown which surrounds us. Reverently. Let us go with a sense of awe, a feeling of approaching the powerful holy, whose lightning slashes the sky, whose persistence splits concrete with green sprouts, whose miracles are present in every place and moment. Hopefully, out of our need for wholeness in our lives, the reconciliation of mind and heart, the conjunction of reason and passion, the intersection of the timeless with time. Quietly, for no words will explain the inarticulate or summon the presence that is always present, even in our absence. But what shall I say? Anything, any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request, any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself. Or perhaps nothing. No complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. Simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. And at the end say, Amen. McKeeman says you can address the mystery with any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, or any request. I might add that you do not have to address the mystery alone. In our Candles of Community ritual, you can share those hopes and fears, anger and joy with the congregation so that we may support you. When you raise a joy or concern, Reverend Jenn will light a candle to honor it. You may also ask that a candle be lit for something that is too tender or heavy to express. First, I will read requests that have been sent in previously by email. Now, Reverend Jenn will light one final candle for those joys or concern that remain unexpressed.
Good morning. I'm Erin Walzewski, and I'm here to talk about sharing our abundance. If you are a visitor or new to our church, then you should know that every week when we collect an offering, the money goes not to our church, but to a local, state, national, or even international organization that connects with the message that we're talking about today. And today, our recipient is Found House, which I believe was selected by Reverend Jenn. So thank you for selecting one that we like to support regularly. So last Thursday, my kids were hoping for a snow day. Do you remember this from when you were a kid or when your children were in school and you were thinking, is it going to be a snow day? Is it going to be a snow day? So my daughter came home and she said that there are ways that you can make a snow day happen, which I have never heard about before. So apparently, so maybe you all know some of these methods. She said, she started by saying, "Mom, can I flush an ice cube down the toilet?" And I said, well, so there were 4 that she talked about. One was flushing an ice cube down the toilet. The second one was sleeping with your pajamas inside out. Oh, you're nodding like this is what the common knowledge. Oh, and upside, I didn't know about that part. The third one was sleeping with a spoon under your pillow. No, so you're laughing like that one's silly. An old wives' tale, that one. And then the fourth one was putting a white crayon in the freezer. So my daughter did all of these things, and she got her brother to also sleep with a spoon under his pillow. So all of the things, and about at 10:30 at night, Luke and I were watching TV, and he had his phone out and was looking at the weather forecast, and he said, "The kids are going to be disappointed. This is just going to be a dusting." But we woke up on Friday, and guess what? Snow day. So apparently one of those 4, maybe all of those 4 methods really are effective ways to make a snow day happen. I had never heard about this. We didn't have this when I was a kid. We just hoped for snow days. But to pivot a little bit, snow days are not such joyous events for everybody. For families experiencing homelessness, winter months, cold months can be really, really difficult. Because if you're sleeping outside, or if you're sleeping in your car, or if you're not really sure where you're sleeping tonight, the winter months can be particularly difficult. So one of the reasons we're supporting Found House is because Found House provides for families who are experiencing homelessness, they can provide emergency shelter, they can provide shelter diversion, they can provide transitional housing for families that are experiencing snow days and hopefully the joy of the snow, but also through Found House receiving the safety of warm shelter, reliable place to sleep every night. So with that, we would gratefully welcome any contributions you choose to give today to Found House.
Good morning. Some of you might remember my family and I were here in September when you had that carnival. And so we got that opportunity to see your beautiful space and meet some of you. And it's such a delight to be in Cincinnati, and because this is the first congregation that I've served, St. John's is, where there's more than one UU congregation within, 30, 40 miles. I serve mostly in the Midwest, and we usually are kind of spread out. I'm so glad there are so many of us here. So I want to share with you some of what I have learned and benefited from learning about the life of James Luther Adams. James Luther Adams is one of the most well-known Unitarian Universalist theologians. He was born in 1901, so you folks were already around when he was born, to Leah Mae Bartlett and James Carey Adams, and over the course of his life, he saw transformations in our understanding of theology and social ethics. His father was a farmer and an itinerant Baptist preacher. This means he traveled from town to town, from church to church, often preaching in a different place every week. Adams would go with his father on the preaching circuit with his violin and accompany the hymns. Now, his parents didn't approve of modern influences that were finding their way to the Baptists, and so they joined Plymouth Brethren, where his father took up the mantle of St. Paul and would not accept pay for preaching the gospel, which I imagine is the dream of many boards. When he was 16, James's father fell seriously ill, so he dropped out of high school so he could get a job and support his family. He worked for Northern Pacific Railroad and learned speed shorthand. He soon rose to the position of secretary to the regional superintendent and was offered a big promotion but turned it down so he could go back to school. In 1920, he started attending the Universalist of Minnesota and continued to work night shifts at the rail yards. It was in higher education that Adams came to be University of Minnesota. Adams came to the conclusion that he rejected all religion, even making vicious attacks on religion in all his public speaking class assignments. But according to biographer George Beach, then came the day after class when he casually commented to his professor, Frank Reggie, that he didn't know what he would do after graduating. His professor replied, "Why, I've known what you're going to do for some time. You're going to be a preacher. Obviously, young man, your passion is religion because you miss no chance to attack it. But apparently, you've never heard of a self-critical religion." With his professor's counsel, Adams soon found himself enrolled at Harvard Divinity School, preparing for Unitarian ministry. Adams saw the important ideas of this theology, which were rooted in personal experience, including that of becoming a Unitarian. In 1927, he was ordained and installed as the minister of Second Unitarian Church in Salem, Massachusetts. That year, he also married Margaret Ann Young. Together, the couple hosted regular events for theological students and continued the practice when they moved back to Chicago. They became involved in important social justice and social reform causes, including anti-racism. Adams began taking extended trips to Europe to meet with intellectuals and church leaders, including people like T.S. Eliot, Karl Barth, Rudolf Otto, and Peter Brunner. As the Nazis came to power in Germany, Adams saw friends arrested and imprisoned for anti-Nazi preaching. Eventually, Adams himself was detained by the Gestapo for questioning. He was accused of having suspicious contacts with anti-Nazi students. He was, in fact, smuggling documents. One important conclusion he drew from his experiences in Nazi Germany was that the German universities and churches gave but feeble resistance to the growing atrocities there. When he returned to the United States, he saw a country that was rife with anti-Semitism, racism, and isolationism, and began to ask, how different are we? But even in the midst of his social justice work, Adams was a joyfully oriented person. Much of this is attributed to his love of stories. Adams would often tell stories celebrating intellectual and cultural creativity. He would describe some creative achievement of humanity and then exclaim, "Now, isn't that remarkable?" George Beach even says, Adams ascribed Jesus' persuasive power to his invention of parables, works of imagination and artistry. Adams spent much of his life teaching in various seminaries, including Andover Newton, where I attended. His understanding of the world helped shape the Unitarian Universalism as it is today. One of his most well-known essays is titled "The 5 Smooth Stones of Religious Liberalism." I want to share some key ideas from that essay today so that we can consider what Adams still has to offer us. The first smooth stone, according to James Luther Adams, is that revelation is continuous. You might recognize this idea from our United Church of Christ friends who say, God is still speaking, and never place a period where God has placed a comma. We continue to learn and grow from the world around us. Adams believed that we needed to look and depend on that which is greater than ourselves for meaning, and that nature and history are a part of those which science helps us to understand. He said that God is the reality that works upon us and through us, and in accord with which we can discern truth, beauty, or goodness. He understood his Unitarian audience, acknowledging that for some of us, God might not be a word with which we can connect. And he said, if God doesn't work for you, consider that which ultimately concerns humanity, or that in which we have faith. Adams says our liberal faith requires a dependable reality beyond us, beyond our individual humanity and its wishes, which allows for goodness, growth, and meaning. And it is up to us to decide if we are going to work for or against that dependable reality. Adams is giving us a lot of agency here to make our own decisions. Will we join with others for the good of that which ultimately concerns humanity, or against it? And what does that mean? Perhaps Adams understood this because of all the changes from his own life, or from his discussion with other theologians. But what I find really fascinating about this point is this idea that reality is transformative, creative, and recreative. This means our understanding of this reality is never ending. Revelation is continuous. Adam's second smooth stone is that all relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not coercion. He was always thinking about community and how we relate to one another. And after his prior experiences with religion and then Nazi Germany, we can understand why a free, non-coercive community would be so important to him. Here we see Adams advocating for congregational polity. Congregational polity puts the control of and responsibility for our congregations in our hands, rather than as part of a strict hierarchical church structure. This also means we are responsible for our own free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Each of you can find answers to the big questions. You don't need me to tell you what the answers are, but it's something we can talk about together, just like the town in our story. Because it can be tough. In so many ways, we human beings want the answers without having to do heavy lifting. But Adams is advocating for the humility to be aware that we haven't figured it all out. If revelation is ongoing, how can we possibly understand everything? We have to look around us at the results of science, at the teachings of prophets, at nature, our relationships with each other. This is how we develop ideas, through open discourse. and how we create communities of free, non-coercive sharing of those ideas. George Beach says, Adams insisted that socially relevant decision requires personal engagement in groups, voluntary associations, which seek to influence public life at all levels from local to global. They equip resistance, going to work at the cutting edges of social change. Jesus' word, by their fruits you shall know them, is artfully turned in Adam's words, by their groups you shall know them. He goes on to say, it is through groups that social power is organized. It is through groups that community needs are brought to the focus that affects public policy. It is through groups that the cultural atmosphere of a community and nation is created. This leads us to Adam's third stone. Liberals recognize a moral obligation to direct one's effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. A storyteller at heart. A central tenet of Adam's understanding of the world is that we need to be in community, even with those who have gone before us. He believed that we need to listen and learn from prophetic ideas, those found in scriptures, in the life of Jesus, those who have gone before us as ancestors, as well as the community and love and justice that we create today. The meaning of life is about bringing about justice, about creating good in the world. The liberal path, and I believe this is the path we are on together, is about holding personal spiritual growth and the struggle for social justice in creative tension. He says freedom, justice, and love require a body as well as a spirit. We can't just meet spiritual needs. We also must work to address the reality we see around us in all its conflict and messiness. We must be a people working to bring good in the world, a people answering the call of love that asks us to move against injustice in practical ways. The third stone connects directly to the fourth. We deny the Immaculate Conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. Now, what does this mean? Adams puts forth the idea that no one is just a good person, a person of pure individual goodness simply by being born naturally sweet or having good intentions and holy thoughts. Instead, he believes that liberals see good as something that we create in how we live it out with others. Goodness is social, how we are in relationship, the actions we take, not just how we are on our own with our own thoughts. As in much of Adams' writing, he names the creative tension here as well. A liberal faith isn't something that can be lived out just within our private inner life, or even just our own immediate family. We have to be active in the world. But it also can't be just about political activism or social change. Our call to social action or social incarnation requires us to balance one with the other. True virtue requires that we must seek to bring about the divine, the sacred in our own lives and in our broader social world. The fifth stone pulls the others together. And certainly I believe it was influenced by his experience with Nazi Germany. He says, liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. Now that's remarkable to me. Adams called the horrible things he was seeing around him the appearance of the great collective demonries. He recognized that war, the Holocaust, racism, human-made atrocities end up showing us parts of ourselves that we would rather not see. He called it the homo abscondus, the hidden or secretive man. And here's where that creative tension comes in. we can truly see what is going on around us and at the same time have hope for the future. Hope for the future is actually grounded in our Christian heritage of both Unitarian and Universalist traditions. We see that hope through our liberal history. St. Augustine's vision of the city of God, William Ellery Channing's prophecy of a new spiritual freedom are just two examples. We can recognize the tragedies of our time while also being focused on a better future. Adams says that the affirmative answer of prophetic religion, which may be heard in the very midst of the doom that threats like thunder, is that history is a struggle in the dead earnest between justice and injustice, looking toward the ultimate victory in the promise and fulfillment of grace. He knew that to rise to the challenge of our days, to make faithful and responsible responses, we must allow ourselves to be changed. And that transformation is one of looking forward to a world in which love wins. My beloved spiritual companions, we don't often talk about theology explicitly in our UU tradition. Many of us come from religious backgrounds in which theology was equated with rigid dogma. But our Unitarian Universalist tradition is grounded in the work of inspiring theologians throughout history, people like James Luther Adams, who point to deep truths while keeping the door open for continuing revelation, community discernment, and creative tension. I encourage you and us all to continue learning from these spiritual ancestors of ours as we move forward in building the world and the future of Unitarian Universalism. Let us close with these final words from James Luther Adams. With all the realism and tough-mindedness that can be mustered, the genuine liberal can finally hear and join the Hallelujah chorus. Intellectual integrity, social relevance, amplitude of perspective, and the spirit of true liberal offer no less. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Jenn. I would note that I'm very happy with the topic she chose because it leads right into tomorrow's Article 2 discussion, where we'll be talking about 7 principles and 6 values and now 5 smooth stones. Please rise as you're willing and able for our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love, and remain standing for the benediction. We're going to make it all the way around? Yes, we can. Excellent. Oh, we got a gap over here. Okay, we can do this. We got it. And today, since Reverend Jenn is with us and she has her back to the screen, we'll do it by call and response, our old-fashioned way. How's it start? May the spirit of life
May the spirit of life
that each of us possesses flow from one to the other.
flow from one to the other.
May it stay with us
May it stay with us
and bring us peace and harmony
and bring us peace and harmony
until we meet again.
until we meet again. Amen.
So,